So today I want to do a retrospective on what is quite possibly my favorite TV show of all time, which would be Lost. And Lost always bugs me because I remember when it was popping off, and had a grip on the people that was unlike anything I've ever seen. But then after the finale finished, it it, it didn't have any staying power in the social conversation at all. Like no one talks about
Mm.
Lost the same way that people even talk about Game of Thrones, despite how Game of Thrones ended, which is bizarre to me because after having watched all 6 seasons in a really short amount of time span, which was unhealthy for my sleep schedule, it's a fucking phenomenal show, dude, and I think it deserves a lot more credit for not only influencing how TV would eventually become, but also for having like a really good and satisfying storyline. What do you think about Lost? Just off the bat.
There's two things you said that stuck out to me. Is that the first one is that Lost was a huge Lost. Every show that you like on Netflix, HBO, we'll just say The Leftover. What's one like The Leftovers or Succession? Anything like that? All those shows were made possible by Lost.
Yep,
Lost was
yep.
the original mystery box, episodic. I don't want to say, let's just say true fiction, not realistic fiction. We'll say The Sopranos. It's a true fiction show that kind of paved the way for what eventually would become a formula for streaming platforms for years to come. So I was around when that show was coming out. It was just a gigantic deal. It was all anyone could talk about all the time. So yeah, I do. When you put it that way, that it doesn't have like standing cultural impact in the same way Game of Thrones kind of won't because of the way it ended, then yeah, I can kind of see that. But the second part is that I had no idea it was only 6 seasons. It was
I
it was
know.
only 6 seasons.
Yeah, it feels a lot
For some
longer,
reason,
right?
yeah, the way people talk about it, you think it would be 9 or 10. I don't know
Mm.
why people would bemoan what happens on this show when it's really only 6 seasons. I mean, isn't that what? How many seasons was Breaking Bad? Wasn't that 4 or 5?
It was six. Well, five
Yeah.
and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a really comfortable runtime for an episodic TV show like that. So, yeah, that's interesting to me. So I watched about the first season or so of Lost, and then eventually kind of pulled away, just busier in life, and I never got back around to it. I've only heard snippets or seen parts of episodes. So maybe it'll be something that'll get back around to if you can convince me.
I hope I do because it really is a phenomenal show. But what I'll do is I'll give like a quick retrospective on what happens throughout the show, just so you guys understand like what's happening, and I'll do it season by season, right? So season one, you start off with the pilot, which I gotta say people keep saying it's a phenomenal pilot, and I think it's serviceable, but I actually had to watch the pilot. Um, it didn't hook me the first time I watched it, and I put the show away for 2 3 years until I forced myself to watch it again and power through the first episode. So it's serviceable. It's okay. It sets up the characters well, and once you get into the characters, you start to get a feel for the show, and that's when it really hooks you in. And off the bat, you're introduced to like this flashback system, which I think is really smart that they introduced that, because if you think about it, if they were on the island the entire time and it was just them on the island, it would get pretty stale really quickly. So it's good that you get to explore the lives and the characters and their motivations, how they all arrived on the island, and where their mental state is at. And it I have to say it this is probably like one of the most engaging cast of characters that I've seen in a TV show in a long time. And that's saying something because I watch a lot of TV. Um,
Yeah,
you have,
it's
yeah,
funny that you say that before you jump into them. It's one of the few shows, and you can measure the success any way you want, but no one was really distasteful of these actors after the show had ended. No, they really didn't wear out their welcome. You think of, I mean, Star Wars, for instance, a lot of those actors found it difficult to kind of get out of their shell and act in a different typecast afterwards. And when you mentioned Game of Thrones, I think we were just talking about it last night. Those people aren't getting business anywhere else. I mean, they're having a really hard time branching out. They're almost poisoned for shows and box office now. So when you talk about the cast now, I'm thinking of a lot of people, especially Evangeline Lilly, people like that. They're really not frowned upon now in the industry, and even from onlookers either. I think it's a great cast. So,
but yeah, and one of the key themes of season 1 is building up this this dynamic of science versus faith. Right, you have science coming in from Jack, the doctor, and the sort of like quote unquote protagonist of the show. You know, he's rigid in his thinking. He thinks, you know, if I can't see it, if I can't touch it, it's really not my concern. It doesn't exist. It's not real. That sort of stuff. And it makes sense because he's a doctor. He has to deal in like literal things. Otherwise, people will die. And I feel like he gets really stuck in that mindset. To contrast that, you have someone that is purely a man of faith, and you see that in John Locke, which is probably my favorite character of the entire show. So this guy, he is a cripple that when he lands on the island, he regains the ability to walk, and you know, he has this really tragic backstory where he has sort of like a really tough life, and you know, his parents weren't good to him. You know, he works like a dead-end job, and then, you know, one of his parents comes in to reconnect later on in his life, and he's really happy, he's ecstatic, and then it turns out to be a ruse, and he finds rock bottom, and he finds a way to go even lower. But through that process, he becomes, through the process of him arriving on the island and seeing that, you know, he was brought on the island for a reason, he develops like this rock solid faith, and it's this faith that like carries him forward in a way unlike any other character drives themselves in the show. And he really is like the polar opposite of Jack, you know, where Jack will want to research something and before going to a different location, John will just go with straight. If he gets the gut feeling, if he feels like that's his destiny, he's gonna go for it no matter what. And off the bat, I was for John all the way. I kind of hated Jack. I thought he was a stick up his ass, and I didn't enjoy his character. But yeah, what do you think of Jack initially?
I can't remember much from him, but I do remember John, mainly because I have a buddy who used to live in LA, and at his brother's place, he lived in the same building as the actor. It's the bald guy, right?
That's so sick. Yeah.
Yeah, so he used to come to their parties. He said he was a really cool dude. And I don't know what work he was doing at the time then, but that's the most that I know about him. But I do remember glimpses. I mean, was that Jack character the indirect leader of the group? Really?
He was, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't remember being overly frustrated with him, but there was definitely some tenseness on the island that you could feel within the group. So I feel like the character led as best he could, right, and was a true rationalist. So
he was okay, but something about him just bugged me. It's like, you know, if I was on the island with them, and he starts ordering me to do shit, I'm like, you're not my fucking dad. I'm gonna do what I want, bitch. Like,
you need to work together if you're in that situation, though.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, who crowned this dude king? You know, like...
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's
you
true.
know, he sort of like assumes the role of leader without anyone like voting on it. And it's like, you know, I guess no one really votes on a monarchy and feudal systems and how they arise and stuff. But would have been nice to consort with the others first, you know, before crowning yourself. But hey,
actually,
you know.
now that you say this, if I landed on a deserted island with a group of 10 people, I think I would be a great leader. honestly. But how would I go about telling them that I want to be their leader? You have to show it, right? You have
No,
to show
you
it.
just do what Jack did and just start giving people orders, I guess.
So we can do that the second we land or the second we crash, we get back from crashing. Yeah. I'll get some really easy orders in first. Like, you start breathing right now. Okay, good job. And then they'll subconsciously think I'm their leader. So, okay. All right.
Yeah,
It's much to think about
yeah,
here.
it seems you're well learned on how to become a shot caller, you know?
More to come on that one.
But yeah, and towards the end of the first season, they discover a hatch, which is like a secret room in the island. And this hatch is like nearly impenetrable using like their tools, like wooden stakes and all that. And they're trying to discover how to open the hatch for like all these episodes, and they finally open it at the finale of season 1, and that is where it leads on to season 2. And the build up to opening the hatch in season 2, I was told that more people tuned in for that season opening on season 2 than any other show in history, in terms of like fictional TV shows, because everyone wanted to know what was inside that secret room on the island.
If you,
And
yeah, go ahead.
and we see that we see what's inside that. And I'm not going to spoil it for you guys, but it's mostly season 2 is mostly them discovering like what's inside the hatch. And
Why not spoil
and,
it? The movie's 50. The show's like 10 years old now. 15.
well, they discovered that it's
I want to know.
So they discover a guy living inside, and his name's Desmond, right? And he has to push this button every 108 minutes, supposedly. Otherwise, the world will end. Supposedly, allegedly. So they go in the hatch. They meet Desmond. Desmond like runs off and goes somewhere else. And then they take control of the hatch, which is a nice change. You know, they used to be like just bums on the beach, but now they have like whole like a apartment down there. You know, stocked full of food. They're Gucci on food till like God knows when. You know, and it's a really great addition to how the pace of life changed on the island, and it gives a peek to that there's more to the island than people initially thought there would be.
Is this before or after they meet that other group that's led by that kind of cult leader?
That's before. Yeah, it's before.
Okay. So that was still to come, because I remember the show still had a lot of mystique then too when they met that guy. I wanted to pause for a second and kind of I don't know the entire plot of the show, but I certainly know the conversation that was going on around it when it first came out. And I think, and this might be too much of a pool, I think a lot of people know what I'm talking about when I say this, but part of the reason why Valve never released Half-Life 3 was because they felt whatever they came up with could not possibly live up to the gargantuan level of expectations that people had for what that next installment in the series would be. That's kind of how I feel about Lost. I do not think, I mean, this was something that was spoken about on normal local news channels almost weekly to daily, was why are they on the island? That was all people could talk about in media conversation, was what is the island for? Why are people on the island? And this was kind of the birth of theorizing. You know, that's what made the ending of The Sopranos so special, because instead of it being tied up with a bow, there's more to this day to talk about. And that's what it was with Lost at the time. It was, why they must be in some kind of purgatory, or I think they're all already dead and they're just having a fever dream, you know, or it was a TV show set all along. There was so many, and so when you're talking about, let's just say a general part of the total population, we'll just say the United States, was tuned in to see what they could learn about this island, that's a really fun experience for viewers to all take on together. And it's really rare to capture that. But what's even harder is to live up to the expectations of why they're actually there, right? So,
but somehow they pulled it off, you know? They managed to do it.
Did they? I don't know. You tell me.
They did, yeah. Season 2 was regarded as like one of the best seasons of Lost or in TV shows, actually. Not even just Lost.
Really?
But I want to get to like the core theme of season 2, which is something that you might have noticed as well. I mentioned that John Locke was a man of faith in season 1, and he aligns his destiny with what's inside the hatch. He's like, he keeps saying to himself, my destiny is inside this. Everything in my life has led to what is to getting inside this hatch. And he opens the hatch, and he finds that it's part of this thing called the Dharma Initiative, which runs surveillance stations and experiment stations across the island. And this sort of like breaks John. It breaks his faith, because he starts to wonder, what if this thing isn't just destiny? It's just a bunch of scientists like experimenting on me. And I think that that's one of the most like touching arcs I've seen. It they really do portray him as like a real human being. It's only human for someone to stumble and lose your faith. But even better is he finds a way. Destiny finds a way to help John regain his faith towards the end of season 2 as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, season 3. This is where the quality starts to dip, and I feel like this is where people start to get, not to make a pun, start to get lost. This is when the others come in.
Yeah.
When they first introduce the others, they're sort of like they're portrayed as like a group of supernatural beings that make no noise when they walk, and they can kill anyone on sight.
I wonder if they're supposed to symbolize Native Americans or something. Go ahead, sorry.
Sort of, yeah. And they meet the survivors of the plane crash, and they promise some of them, if you cooperate, we'll send you guys home. And this is where the dynamic. This is where the dynamic of John versus Jack starts to really ramp up, because John gets into he comes into some information that makes him think that it's better for them to stay on the island than to cooperate with these guys. So, and Jack's for cooperation, and he wants to get off. And that's when the war between Jack and John starts ramping up. John like says, "No, we have
Lost
to stay here."
Civil War.
Yeah. He's like, "Our destiny is on this island. You have to trust, and you have to have faith that we were brought here for a reason." And Jack's like, "Dude, I just want to go home, dude. Please." But yeah, we learn more about the history of the island. The Dharma Initiative, how they were wiped out. And it's a bit of a mess season, because it's sort of like I don't know why, but I just don't like it when they introduce people, tune people into a TV show. It starts to get tiring, But it was okay, and it had a really, really superb finale with one of the most touching character deaths that I've seen in a while, which was Charlie's death. It's this this self-important drug addict who finally learns how to put himself aside and sacrifice himself for the greater good, and he dies in a really heroic and distinguishable way.
Oh, this is the guy who is the Hobbit actor.
Is it?
Or he plays one of the hobbits in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, damn, I didn't even know that.
Absolutely. I think he's Pip. Yeah, something like that.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and then Evangeline Lilly ended up being in the Hobbit movie, so I don't know, some Peter Jackson alumni in this show for some reason. Just something I wanted to touch on real quick about the John Locke that reminded me of, and this will be my magnum opus episode someday on this channel, because X-Files is one of my favorite shows, if not my favorite show of all time. But there's a moment in the series where Mulder struggles with his quote-unquote faith, where he finds out that all these aliens that supposedly that all these aliens that he's been believing in this entire time, and extraterrestrials that he kind of based his disappearance of his sister off of, they were actually government programs. So something supernatural that he had faith in, he finds out it's really just a scientific operation, a government psyop. So that kind of reminded me when you said John Locke, his faith was challenged, because when he finds out all these, fantastical miracles, or what the secret of this island may have just been, was a scientific experiment, right? It kind of shook him for a second there.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
That ties into sort of the critique I had for the season, which is, you know, and I don't really fault the show for this. I think it's just like how like human psychology is. But the more you learn about something, the less mystical and interesting it becomes. So,
Mm.
this season we learned more about the others and the Dharma Initiative and all that, and what was once an island of like what seemed like infinite mystery sort of becomes more and more set in stone as to what it really is. And if you don't like what it's becoming, it becomes tough. But I think it was okay. It did make the others like, so it was funny because when they introduced the others at the end of season 2 or something, they seemed like this otherworldly force, right? But then as you spend more time with them, they become more and more human, and they don't really seem as all that tactical later on in the
Mm.
in the season. So season 4, it's sort of the same quality as season 3, except the tables have turned. Now the others and the survivors are under attack by this third group, led by this guy called Charles, who was an ex other. You know, um, and another thing that happens is the survivors get fake rescued by people posing as rescuers, but really they have no intention of leaving the island. They want to come to the island and exploit the resources for themselves. Um, but something cool that happens is that they try to introduce the mysticism that was present in season 1 and 2 back into the show with Jacob, and
Mm.
and I really enjoyed this part. I really enjoy like the mystical, magical elements, um, and they really pushed it to the nines with the season, with the end of the season where Jacob and John and Benjamin, which is the leader of the others, they actually get a way to move the island physically. So they physically move the island's location through some magical method, which I won't explain. But it's really fucking cool, and I'm really glad that they did that. It would have been so lame if the more the seasons went on, they could explain everything through like logical like science, and oh, this happened just because that guy was there. I'm glad they did this magical thing. But basically, 6 people, they get off the island through this fake rescuer group, and they learn that their life off the island really isn't all that cracked up to be. When they're on
That's
when
so
they're
interesting.
when they're on the island, they place all their hope like, dude, if I can just get off this fucking island, my life would be so sick. I sort everything out. But then they realize, hold on, I'm kind of a fucking loser before I even let myself on the island in the first place. Like my life was kind of in shambles, and the island sort of gave me a break from that. You know,
Yeah, it's
and
funny. Something
and
I was gonna. Yeah, go ahead.
oh, no, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say something I was gonna bring up before is that's kind of the. I don't want to call it a trope, but in the Wizard of Oz, you find out what's behind the curtain, quote unquote, which is a popular term, is that it wasn't a super strong, magnanimous wizard with these magical powers. It was a man behind a curtain moving a machine. And I think a lot of people had that moment with Lost, where it wasn't some magnificent, fanciful, just paranormal, unexplainable island. There was more mechanical. There was more of a mechanical, scientific nature to it, and that bored people. It didn't bore them, but it maybe didn't meet the expectations they had to be fulfilled for what they thought the island was. And then you say they bring someone like Jacob, right, to kind of bring some of that mysticism back and put the genie back into a bottle for another genie reveal later on. So I think the show had a really difficult journey in front of it to try and manage expectations with what people wanted the island to be and
Yeah,
how to meet them. And honestly, from what you're saying, it sounds like they did all they could, really,
they really did.
to keep things interesting on this
In
island.
fact, the studio executives wanted them to make 3 more seasons, and And the two show producers were like, "No, if you do that, we're gonna walk. Like, we're not doing that at all." So thank God they did that. But also a cool thing is that so for the past 3 seasons before this, before season 4, you had flashbacks, right? And season 4 is when you start to get introduced to the flash forward. So before the island, it flash forwards a couple years in the future, and it just shows a couple of them off the island, and their life is just total shit, you know. Um, and then I love how that this season ends with Jack saying the meme like, "You we have to go back." You know, that's where the "you have to go back to Reddit" meme came from. You know,
Really?
yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I do like when they do that, and it's escaping me, and maybe as I'm talking about it, I mean, the only example I can think of so far is Venom, where in the movies, he gets taken over by Tom Hardy's character, gets taken over by the symbiote, and all he tries to do is get away from it. He says, "I don't want to be Venom. I would just want my normal life back." And then when he gets it back, he thinks, "This is terrible. I wish I was Venom again." Yeah. It's kind of like if it were on The Office or on Lost. I think to myself, "Hey, you're on this, lively island where there's a mystery behind every door, and you can either have that or your office job paying your mortgage." And that's funny that you say that they were kind of led to think that maybe things weren't so bad on that island. Maybe it was a part of life that I was missing all along. It's cool they went in that direction. I like
Honestly, I would fucking love to be on the island. Like, imagine you're on the island, you find like some magical temple, you're like trying to uncover its secrets, versus you're back off the island and you're filing your taxes. Like, come on, dude. Like,
all we yearn for in life is adventure. That's what people want, and when they're given it, I mean, do they accept the call to action or not? And it sounds like these were characters that really did love their life there, and it makes me wonder, if I were stuck in the same situation, would I like it so much? I mean, we like to imagine ourselves in a post-apocalyptic wasteland instead of where we're at now. What does that say? That's a life that some people would refer to the let's say mundaneness or banality of what we do now. So I don't know. It's just a funny thing to think about.
All right, so we're on season 5, and season 5 is when Kino is back on the menu. Okay,
Okay.
So I mentioned how season 4 ends with them using some magic to physically move the island, and this mechanism is kind of fucked up, and this induces involuntary time travel. So this group, which is Sawyer, Juliet, Jin, and Miles, and some other guy, they start hopping through time, and I fucking love this, dude. I love the dynamic between all of them. Jin, he's like trying to learn English, and he's like wholesome, and he's just trying to like communicate with like hand signals and all that.
So how okay, this is something that I mean to ask about. So again, I'm the person that's kind of here to say what I've been hearing about, what I heard about from the show at the time when I wasn't someone who was watching it. Really was a lot of people would just say passively, it's all time travel now, it's just stupid, they've completely lost the idea of what the show was about. So what was this show's attitude towards time travel? What was this? Did it serve a narrative purpose? Was it to keep things interesting, or
it did serve a narrative purpose? And honestly, right. I kind of like look down on people that don't understand Lost, because guys, it's not that fucking complicated. Like, it's it's like, if you just took like 5 minutes to read what actually happens, you can understand it. It's not like some fucking inception of your mind or some shit. Like, it's not that hard, guys. Come on.
Were they physically traveling back in time, or how did it go?
So they were. So after the island moved, this mechanism kind of fucked up, and they were hopping through time a little bit. But then the mechanism reset itself, and then they stayed. So this group of like 5 people, they permanently traveled 50 years in the past. So this group, which I mentioned, which is Sawyer, Jin, Juliet, and Miles, and some other guy, instead of being on the island in 2004, they're on the island, but in like 1970. Right?
Okay. Is Dharma there?
Yeah, they become part of Dharma, and
okay.
Yeah, they just show up to like, yeah, we just like washed up ashore. Can you give us a job? And then they just like become Dharma people.
Dude, that gives the viewer more of an opportunity to explore different faces of the island. You
I
know,
know,
it's
right?
yeah. Why would you be complaining about that? If your obsession is with the island, wouldn't you want to see the island in 1970 or 2030? That's kind of cool. Okay, I get it.
Yeah. And then there's this really like touching and cool relationship between Sawyer and Juliet. You know, Sawyer at first he's like, "Yo, this bitch is with the others. Why the fuck is she even with us?" But then he starts to like learn who she is, and then they start getting romantically involved, and it's a really wholesome and touching relationship. Um, Meanwhile, while they're stuck in 1970s, the other group, Locke somehow gets off the island, and he tries to get Jack and all the people that got off the island to come back to the island. So he visits all of them like I'm putting together a team, so he visits all of them. He's like, you have to go back, and all of them were like, no, fuck off, I'm not doing that. And then he gets really depressed, and then he gets killed in a really unfortunate way.
Really, John Locke does.
He does, yeah.
That was
Well,
probably a big deal then.
you think he does,
Mm.
but yeah. Also in season 5, you learn more about the origins of the island, like Jacob and his brother, which is unnamed but is referred to as the Man in Black because he wears a black vest. Um, and here's the narrative thing that makes the time travel thing worth it. So you know how in season 2 I mentioned John Locke regains his faith, right? He's like, he keeps saying like, dude, this shit isn't even fucking real. I bet if you don't press that button, nothing even happens. And then they don't press the button, and the entire fucking station blows up.
Do they die?
So no, they don't die because the Chad Desmond comes in at the last second and fucking does like a emergency like release key, which blows up the island, but like, I mean, blows up the station, but saves the island, right? But you learn that the station where you have to press the button every 108 minutes is created because of an event that the group that was stuck in 1970s caused in the first place. That's
Okay.
how the station came to be created,
Yes.
and
Yes.
they so the group is stuck in 1970. They create this event, which is an explosion as well, and that sends them back into time, into the present time, and
Mm.
and this leads into season 6. So everyone's back on the island. I mean, some people are back on the island. Jack and stuff, they're coming back to the island. They get convinced by Locke. Everyone's back, and this is the
I like
final.
that. It's like back to the beginning, you know?
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, that's
It's
cool.
like, so this is the final battle between Jacob, which is supposed to be the Guardian Protector, versus the Man in Black, who's like this evil spirit who just wants to leave, but he knows that if he leaves the island, it's going to corrupt the entire world or something. The light of the
Okay.
world would be extinguished, and all they have left is the power of the island to stop him. And it's a network TV show, so you can kind of extrapolate that it does have a happy ending. And I'm not going to
Yeah.
go into how the ending happens because you really should watch it for yourself. But Jack and the rest, they pull through, and they manage to save the day.
Do they
from all
conquer
that.
the evil spirit?
They do. He gets BTFO'd.
Okay, and what Okay. What happens to the island at the end?
So the island, the island, if I remember correctly, it sinks to the bottom of the ocean, but
Okay.
the evil is still contained in there.
Okay.
And I'm not going to go into like the details of like how they eventually win the day, because again, if you're listening to this, you really should watch it for yourself. But but just trust me that they win somehow, and it's a well-deserved win, and they work hard for it. And that isn't the end of the story, right? So you had flashbacks and you have flash forwards, but throughout this entire season of season 6, you have what are referred to as flash sideways, where it seems like they're flashing to an alternate reality where everything is all good. The plane never crashed, and everyone's lives like miraculously work out,
Hmm.
right? And you find out that in the final two episodes that not all that this isn't an alternate reality, it's purgatory.
What is the island or their alternative lives?
These flash sideways are depicting their experiences in purgatory. So
Okay.
so this is going to be one of the biggest fucking pleb filters of all time, right? So follow me on this. They save the day on the island, and then everyone that survives the island, they get off the island and they go and live their lives, and then they all live out their lives, and some die before the others, but they eventually all die because all living things die, right?
Sure.
So purgatory, it's a place outside of time, which means that time doesn't really exist. There is no now, there is no like future or past in purgatory. um, and because all of those people eventually die, even like if it's old age or premature deaths, they all meet up in purgatory because their most important lives, the most important part of their lives were were developed on the island.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so they all meet up in purgatory after all those events, which really did happened. And they meet up and they're like, we created this space in purgatory as a way to remember to see each other again before we pass on
Wow. Okay.
to the afterlife, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, the way that they did this, it's genuinely one of the most touching and beautiful finale endings I've ever fucking seen. The scene where Jack speaks with his dad, where Jack was like, is this real? Did all that happen? And he's like, it did happen. You did all that, and now it's here, and I'm here to help you pass on. It's really touching, and it brought a tear to my eye at how fucking beautiful it was. And it pains me so fucking much that this somehow is so complex to some people that they think, oh, they were in purgatory the whole time. It's like, no, you fucking retard. Like, how was this complex for you to understand? It happened, and eventually everything dies, so they're gonna be in purgatory eventually. So yeah, like, does that make sense to you?
It not only does it make sense, but also I really think that it would help to, and people do this with the homes that they grow up in. They give emotional attachments. It's almost like a spirit haunting their home that after they've died. So you kind of can, in a way, look at the island as a living entity, a living, breathing entity that impacted all of these people's lives and is inextricably tied to them somehow. And anything that happens after that point in these people's lives is kind of fair game in the way that it's interpreted by the island and its relationship to them. So it sounds like some really fantastical things happened over the 5 seasons leading up to this, that what you're talking about shouldn't be so unbelievable. I mean, why would it be? What's different from them having glimpses into some alternative purgatory world not on the island, when in the first season all everyone could talk about was what they were there for and if it were really happening? I mean, it's kind of some of the things at the core of it is, what am I really looking at? What am I really experiencing? Am I awake? Am I asleep? Is this really happening? When is it happening? And all those questions are kind of answered by the fact that the island is just this fluid place that can disappear, it can reappear, it can move through, it can be a bystander and movement through time. There's kind of a lot there that opens the door for, I don't know, highly interpretive, creative writing decisions like what you're talking about. I'm not sure, they could have just ended the show with the battle that you're talking about against the evil smoke monster, but that's standard.
That's cliche.
Yeah, exactly. So why not give some type of ending that we can talk about like we are right now, instead of they beat it was a black, and this is why I hate viewers, I hate fans, I don't know why people would go out of their way to please them, because at the end of the day, people do subconsciously crave black and white good versus evil stories, and when the ending is somewhat interpretive, the masses, they can't figure that out. And this show,
The
whether
funny
people
thing is
like
that
it or
it's
not,
not
was
even
for the
interpretive, and they
masses.
still can't figure it out.
There you go. There you go. I guess it's interpretive to the layman, some would say. So yeah, it just yeah, it sounds like it's great. There's that's one of the things I was wondering, which is kind of what the ending was and why people have such an issue with it. It doesn't sound like it's too difficult to understand. So probably
It's
might
really
take an
not.
additional piece of reading for me to fully flesh it out. But the other part is so this evil man, and this is the thing that I always wonder, because I actually refused to watch the show after I saw the smoke man kill someone and there was nothing they could do about it. I hate when there's an opponent or an evil entity in a show that you have no defense against them. They can just kill anyone indiscriminately. It just bothers me. But I saw an episode where a smoke man just killed someone for no reason. What was it? So the smoke man was the evil black entity this whole time, or was he the watcher of the island? What was the smoke monster?
So the smoke monster, if you go back to the origin of the island, there were two brothers on the island, and their mother
It's
was
like a mythical
murdered by
Cain and Abel or something.
exactly.
That's
So
yeah.
and their mother was murdered by one of the brothers, and as punishment, the Jacob, which is one of the brothers, threw the other brother into the core of the island, which transformed him into this smoke monster, and he can take the form of anyone that has died on the island. And
Ah,
that is, and I don't really mind what you mentioned, like the smoke monster kills someone and there's nothing you can do about it, because a lot of people die in this show, and it's not really, life really isn't fair. Sometimes it's just your time. Like there's this cool character called Mr. Echo who helps people discover all these different hatches and different secret rooms and all this stuff, and then he just dies randomly from a random thing. So it's not, I don't mind that, because to me it's like, they're on this island, they all serve a purpose, and then once their purpose is served, once their quote unquote destiny has been fulfilled, their time's up, that's sort of, you see that in life as well. I'm sure like some reindeer doesn't deserve to get shot in the head by a hunter, but that's just what life is. It's not fair, and neither is the stuff in the show.
they skated in and out of that theme in The Walking Dead. They gave it up entirely towards the end. It just became about invincibility, some would say, with some of the characters to a level to be. So, Daryl, I'm looking at you. But I remember in one of the mid to latter seasons, one of the themes in a few of the episodes is that it could be anyone. It could be you at any moment, and it's unceremonial as well. That's the
Yeah.
world that we live in, and that's the harshness of the Walking Dead world, or we'll say the Lost world, too. So,
So another thing that was amazing this season. So for the first 4.5 seasons, I really hated Jack. Like I was the president of the Jack hating club, dude. I
OG
just
hater.
did not like that guy at all. But after Locke died, something amazing happens with Jack. He takes up Jack's mantle and becomes a man of faith himself, and it's because of his faith in doing what must be done and trusting his destiny that he's able to save the day. So Jack instantly went from being one of like my most despised characters to being one of my most respected, because he really went through it and he saw the light at the end. So hats off to Jack. Bravo. I love the actor.
Yeah.
But overall thoughts, this really is like an amazing series with albeit small dips in quality towards the middle. I'd give season 1 and 2 literally 10 out of 10. It's phenomenal TV, probably the best I've ever seen. Season 3 and 4, depends on how much you like introducing like lots of characters, but they're like a 6 and 7 out of 10, but it's still serviceable, right? Season
And
5 it's
Yeah.
an 8 out of 10, and season 6, which is the finale, um, I really liked it, and I would give it 8 to maybe 9 out of 10.
Really? Yeah, it's hard
Yeah,
for
yeah.
shows to it's hard for shows to finish that strong nowadays. And I think 6 is the absolute cap for any show to remain interesting. I think most shows shouldn't go beyond season 3 before they start losing themselves. So
Mm.
I'm glad I could kind of keep it down there. But I think this is, and I'm not trying to delve into meta commentary or anything, but I think we can learn something from a show like this because we have an overly analytical, rationalist world right now because we're a generation that can get any fact or factoid at the palm of our hands. So it's kind of removed our imagination and just made us kind of it made us over reliant on fact-based conversation and just looking at the rational end because we like to think that we know everything now. You have a show that is very open-ended in portraying myth on this island, which I think is important, and a character on that show who is a rationalist that goes through unexplainable events that kind of finds his faith-filled side, his side that kind of exposes itself to myth through the course of the show and the experiences that he has. So it's kind of worth re-examining. The show is worth re-examining because it seems like it's not afraid to go into myth-based themes, supernatural themes, and not in an exploratory, indulgent way like a haunted school or Harry Potter. It's more intentional in the way that it portrays myth and human nature, and I think that's something that we've lost, and it's something that we can learn from this show. I think it's cool. I think it was released at a cool point in time. It was right before the true information age. When did it come out? Was it 09, I think?
No, it was. I think it was like '05, wasn't it?
Wow, it is older than I thought. Wow, 2004. So this really was on the cusp of the true information age. And I think that's what made it so interesting in conversation was a lot of what was discussed was to you by the media or you in person. This really was before the advent of collective social media. I think MySpace was just kicking into full gear around this time, but and Facebook wasn't. I don't think it was quite out yet. So this was when people were a lot more open and conversational towards kind of the themes that are in this show, and I think its effect. I hope people don't forget the effect it has on sitcom television. I mean, it changed it forever. Who was it? J.J. Abrams.
J.J. Abrams was there for like the first 2 seasons, I think. But yeah, he was really instrumental in like setting up the mystery box thing. Like
yeah, that's his explanation. The mystery box. He sounds like he set up the mystery box and then left. He's like, well, why would I need to show what's in it? And to me, the more I see movies, the less I need them to be revealed. But it sounds like this movie wrapped it up in a satisfying way, but still left you with something to talk about, and that's not easy. That's not an easy thing to do. So
yep. And before we head out, I think I'm gonna have to give my my ranking list for the characters. So I'm gonna start out with characters that you can. So pretty much, if I don't mention a character on here, you can just skip all scenes. They're like irrelevant, really. But I'm gonna start it with characters that are on my shit list, which would be Claire, the bald guy that works with Charles. Hurley, I never liked him, the fat guy. What's that guy? The black guy with his son's name. I don't like that guy either.
Okay.
Because he betrayed everyone just to like get his son off the island, which I guess a dad would do, but he's just annoying about it. Meh. Charlie, I put him in there. Jin, I mean not Jin. Jin's wife, I put him there. Jacob, he's a bit meh. Charles, he's meh. Kate, she's okay. I liked her when she was smanging Sawyer though. That was really cool.
You liked that? You're a fan of that?
And then Anna Lucia, she's cool as well. She's meh. The base tier, Mr. Echo, I love that guy. Jin, love him. Juliet, which is Sawyer's GF, love her. Ben, cool. um, Jacob as well. Not Jacob. Richard, the dog. The dog is so based in this one as well. The dog always comes in to like save the day, like when you least expect it as well. Saeed, you know, I like
That
him.
was the one I thought he got killed by the smoke monster, but I always thought he was a cool character from what I remember. So
Yep, yep. And absolute top tier characters: John Locke, Jack, Desmond, and Sawyer. So those
So
are
it
my
sounds like the
favorites.
main characters are the ones who. Okay, well, did you mention who was the fat guy in there? Was he cool?
Hurley, he's on my shit list. He's annoying. I don't like him.
He's annoying. Okay, yeah, he was really popular from the show at the time because I think he was the cool, chill guy. It sounds like he was just passive and boring though.
He he has like these like spurg outs where like so he's like haunted by the numbers of the island, you know, like which have a prophetic meaning, but he has this annoying thing where he can't explain to someone succinctly, like, okay, I have these visions. I know I sound crazy, but just let me explain it to you in like a really succinct way. But no, he has to like spur and be like, the numbers are real. You
So
can't do that."
annoying.
It's-
You can't
yeah.
do that. Okay, I'm starting to remember that act. That's coming back to me a little bit. He lives, doesn't he?
He
Or
lives,
no?
yeah. He lives.
That's a shame. That's a little boring.
Also, he's fat as fuck, and he just doesn't lose any weight on the island. It's like, isn't food supposed to be scarce in this shit? Like, what are you doing?
Oh, hey, that's
How are
the
you
magic
doing
of the island. It keeps you
Yeah, yeah.
keeps you holly and jolly. I don't know. But I appreciate the breakdown, Tyson. You've inspired me to kind of read more into the ending because people had some serious issues with that show, and it sounds like they all just got filtered.
Yep, they truly did.
They truly did. I love it. I love to hear it. Okay. All right. Well, much appreciated. So I think do we got anything else lined up? Oh, you need to watch the Mario movie so I can tell you how much I hate it. So I'm holding you to that one.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix. So all right, you can take us out.
Also, thank you guys for listening, and if you guys have any suggestions for what you guys would want us to see, what could be fun and all that, don't forget to leave a comment and let us know. But yeah, thank you guys for listening, and until next time, we are the Contrarians of the Cosmos.